We've got some big news to take a look at here today involving the New York Rangers officially signing two of their top goalie prospects, including their best one, to new contracts. And also, we've got some very interesting kind of stuff to take a look at involving some current New York Rangers players on the actual NHL kind of side of things, where these are players who are approaching some kind of big career milestones, which we're of course going to take a look at in today's video as well. So let's just get right into it here, and we'll start off with the kind of interesting prospect news here. As like I said, there are two goalie prospects in the New York Rangers system that have now been signed to new contracts, as of course they were RFAs. And those two players are Garand and Tylor Boychuk. Dylan is, of course, the kind of current top goalie prospect in the Rangers system and kind of has been for quite a few years now. And Tylor Boychuk is a massive, 6'8" goalie there. Currently has been kind of playing in the ECHL and AHL a bit as well, but is more than likely going to be competing for that backup spot to become kind of Garand's backup alongside a couple other kind of younger goalies as well, like Hugo Olas and that other kind of goalie they drafted as drafted free agent there as well earlier on this summer. But overall, these are two solid goalie prospects there. Of course, it does take goalies a bit more time than the average kind of, defenseman or forward to really kind of crack the NHL. So, Garand really starting to approach his kind of mid-20s now. And him having, not cracked the actual, NHL lineup yet is not that big of a deal, of course. And this is someone with, someone like Jonathan Quick, more than likely, I would finally guess, probably calling it quits after this upcoming season. I would guess he finally ends up retiring. Once that does happen and the Rangers kind of move on from Quick, then I think that's when we're probably going to see, someone like a Garand really get a serious opportunity to have a shot at that backup goalie position. And now let's take a look at the stats here of each of these goalies before we take a look at the actual contract details. And this past season, of course, Garand was in the AHL for the entirety of it and had 39 games played and a 2.73 goals against average and a .913 save percentage with 3 shutouts and a 20-10-9 record. And he also got to play in one game at the World Championships with Team Canada, where he ended up getting an 11-save shutout against Team Slovenia. So obviously playing for Team Canada there, going up against Slovenia, not a top hockey nation, but still going up against some other pro hockey players. He ended up getting a shutout, so I think that was pretty cool, obviously. But other than that, just had a really solid kind of season there. So I'm definitely excited to see what he can do going forward, and hopefully this upcoming season he can take another big step there and maybe have another phenomenal season down there in the AHL, and maybe for the kind of 2026-27 season, for next season, not this upcoming one, but the one after that, once Jonathan Quick does retire, maybe that's when we do see Garand actually get that backup spot for the Rangers at the NHL level. And next up here, we've got Tylor Boychuk, who, like I said, is a 6'8" goalie prospect, obviously very, very big, and this past season had a pretty good one as well. With the Hartford Wolfpack in the AHL, only had 5 games played, but had a 2.61 goals against average, a .917 save percentage, and 1 shutout in those 5 games played total, and had a 2-2 record. So not bad numbers at all. And then in the ECHL last season there with the Tulsa Oilers, he ended up having 33 games played, a 2.66 goals against average, a .913 save percentage, 2 shutouts, and a 28-5 record, with 2 games played in the playoffs, having a 1.54 goals against average and a .929 save percentage with an 0-1 record. So I think overall, this is clearly someone who is, still fairly young for a goalie prospect, still only 22, turning 23 years old in October. He is a massive 6'8" guy, so he's got that size to his advantage, of course, that kind of Ben Bishop size. And I think obviously he's a goalie prospect. He's still going to take a few years before he actually ends up kind of cracking the NHL potentially, if he ever actually does. But I think from what we're seeing so far there in his kind of 22-year-old season there, this past one, he ended up putting up some really great numbers in the ECHL and AHL in that limited sample size. So I think he's obviously someone who's going to be competing for that backup spot in the AHL, and I'm kind of hoping he does get that, because him and Garand there as that kind of young kind of prospect duo there, being that nice kind of goalie tandem, the AHL might not be a bad thing at all. And especially with that kind of talent that he does have there in that size, you never know what could become of a goalie like that, as it does take them sometimes a lot longer to develop and really kind of reach their potential. So maybe once he becomes 25, 26 years old, we end up seeing him blossom into a great starting caliber guy. We'll have to wait and see, but either way, Tylor Boychuk is definitely an interesting goalie prospect alongside Garand. And to finish things off, before we take a look at the milestones, this was posted on X there by Vince Mercogliano talking about their contracts, and he went on to say, New York Rangers have announced the signings of two goalie prospects, Dylan Garand and Tylor Boychuk, to one-year contract extensions. Garand is on a 2-year deal for $775K in the NHL and $100K in the minors per source. $125K is guaranteed. He was an all-star last season while posting career best, talking about Dylan Garand, in wins, 20-10-9 record, so 20 wins there, having a save percentage of .913 and a goals against average of 2.73. He's the clear number 3 in the organization behind Igor Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick. And as of right now, we don't exactly know the details of that Talyn Boyko deal, but really and truly, the details don't matter too much there. I mean, it only kind of really matters to him and see how much he's kind of, guaranteed in a bonus, whatever it is. So really and truly, whatever his contract is not going to have an effect on the Rangers side of things at all. So that's no big deal. But basically, it is a two-way deal. So if Dylan Garand does come up to the NHL, obviously he doesn't have to be making kind of AHL money. There's going to be making that full kind of NHL kind of size deal, I guess. But all in all, two very solid goalie prospects staying in the organization, which was absolutely expected. And before we take a look at some players approaching some milestones, I did just want to mention that I do post daily New York Rangers videos. So if you are a New York Rangers fan and you've enjoyed this video, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily Rangers content. But let's get right back into things here, and we'll take a look at the first player, which is Artemi Panarin, who is close to a couple milestones here. So the first milestone with Panarin is the fact that he is 50 points off of 600 as a New York Rangers player. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, if he does get up to 600 there, which I'm sure he will if he does stay healthy, he'll be up till kind of 9th place there. He'll be able to jump a guy like Chris Kreider, but won't quite be able to jump Zibanejad more than likely, as he is still right now 39 points back of Zibanejad. But with Zib playing there, unless we do see Zib have an awful season there or Panarin have an insane one or injuries factor in, I would assume Zibanejad will stay above Panarin for this upcoming season as kind of New York Rangers kind of player point leaders there all time. But I would imagine eventually, assuming Panarin does stay past the season, he will end up jumping Zibanejad at some point. Then the next one there with Panarin is his kind of overall kind of games played mark, where he is only 48 off of 800, which is a pretty cool milestone. Next up here for Mika Zibanejad, he is officially 70 games off of 1,000 in his entire NHL career and also 60 points off of 800. And then you've also got another one here, which is Mika Zibanejad being tied right now for the exact same goal total, being 250 with Mark Messier. So he is one goal off of officially passing Mark Messier for a sole position of 8th kind of goal scoring wise all time in New York Rangers history. So I think that's pretty cool. Next up here, we've got JT Miller, who is only 29 games off of 900 games played in his entire NHL career across the 3 teams that he's been a part of course, the Rangers, Vancouver, and Tampa Bay. So I think that's pretty cool. So next up here, we've got Igor Shesterkin, who has a couple milestones he's approaching. The first one being he's at 274 games played right now, so only 26 off of 300 in his NHL career, which is a pretty solid milestone to be at. But also the big one there is him only being 38 wins off of 200, which would definitely be a pretty great milestone to be at. He has career high wins at 37, and then 2 other seasons with 36, and then this past one had 27. So he has gotten pretty close to that 38 win mark in the past there, and if he can get kind of back on track to that kind of mid to upper kind of 30s kind of win totals per season there, maybe he can end up cracking 200 at some point this season. It's not kind of heavily likely, but it's definitely not impossible, as, the last couple seasons other than this past one, he was at, 36, 37, and 36. So definitely has been right around that kind of mark in past seasons. So maybe they can do that once again and actually get that 38 mark to hit 200 throughout this upcoming season. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day, like I said. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts on these kind of player milestones here? And also, what are your thoughts on the New York Rangers, of course, bringing back 2 of their kind of arguably the 2 top goalie prospects in Dylan Garand and Talyn Boyko. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.